Welcome to For Mature Audiences Only, presented by Archer Law Office, the podcast where we have real, unfiltered conversations about caregiving, aging, Medicaid, and the challenges families face when long-term care becomes unavoidable. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon Johnson.
And I'm Mary Shapiro. Today's episode dives deep into one of the most misunderstood and stressful topics in elder care: Medicaid planning, long-term care eligibility, and what families don't realize until it's too late.
We're joined by Lisa Temporado, Chief Operating Officer and Director of Medicaid Services for Archer Law Office, who brings more than a decade of hands-on experience helping families navigate the Medicaid system, and who has also lived this journey herself as a caregiver for her mother.
If you've ever asked the question, when should we start Medicaid planning? Why was our application denied? Or what mistakes cost families thousands of dollars? This episode is for you. This is For Mature Audiences Only, presented by Archer Law Office. Let's get started.
Today we are joined by Lisa Temporado. Lisa has brought her Southern roots to Archer Law Office since 2014. She serves as the firm's Chief Operating Officer, overseeing daily management, staff coordination, and client relations. She also leads the firm's Medicaid division, helping families navigate the complex process of planning and applying for Medicaid. Before joining the firm, Lisa spent 12 years at Random House Publishing in New York. Inspired by her own experience caring for her mother, Lisa's mission is to support caregivers and families and help them feel informed and empowered throughout their journey. She is a member of the American Society on Aging, a proud Somerset County resident, a wife, a mother to 3 handsome boys, a dog lover, an avid traveler, the mama bear of Archer Law Office, Miss Lisa Temporado, on the podcast today. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi. I don't know whether to say hi or whether to growl.
I need to go, what?
How are you today, Lisa?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for taking time, from your schedule to do this podcast with us. We have a lot to go over with you today because you have a very, very important role in our firm. You oversee our Medicaid department, which is a very, very hot topic in today's world. So we're going to get into a lot of good discussions today.
Okay, I'm ready.
So first, before we even get started, tell us how in your career you came to this point where you're helping run a senior living firm and helping manage our Medicaid department, which is one of your many roles here at the firm. Tell us
many hats you wear.
Exactly. Tell us how you came to this part in your career.
Okay, how long is this podcast? So I wish somebody could explain it to me because the whole thing is such a whirlwind. So I had my career and didn't expect to have a second one in my life. My first career was with a small company. Probably nobody's heard of it. It's called Random House Publishing. So that was my career. And then when I started a family, I am fortunate enough that my husband was able to afford to support our family. And so after many years of working for Random House, we decided that I was going to stay home and raise our family. And that was what I was going to do. During that time, when my children were very young, my mom developed dementia. Now, we didn't know that. It was at a time where she was in her young 70s, and she was going about her life. She actually one day was out ballroom dancing with my stepdad, and she came home, and she missed the top step of the front porch and fell and broke her hip. Up to that point, she had what usually people in that age group have, right? She had the occasional UTI and, occasional fever, but not anything that we could trace back to what we would consider now cognitive issues. So she had some hip repair surgery done, and she came out not knowing anyone, because what we didn't realize was that when you have a trauma like that and you have surgery, if you have latent cognitive issues that lend themselves to a dementia diagnosis, whether it be Alzheimer's or any one of the dementia diagnoses, it certainly can speed up. And so here we are. So I went from being a daughter to being a caretaker. Now, I do have 2 sisters, but they were limited in what they were able to do simply because of geographic.
I was going to say you were the closest one.
Absolutely.
Geographically to
a
mom.
mile away from mom.
I didn't know you were that close to
Yeah.
Yep. The joke was that my husband and I moved a mile away, which was a mile further than my mom could walk because she didn't drive. Ha ha ha. So I became the primary caretaker, and not knowing anything about this diagnosis and what it entailed, thought that we could do it with mom living in her home, which is what so many people think that they can do. And what so many people think is the best.
Yeah.
Right? You guys see that.
Everybody wants to start that way.
And I even think people often, not to cut you off, but buy a home in thoughts that eventually a parent will be able to move in if need be.
Right. And my mom, owned a home outright and lived with my stepdad, a wonderful life. And it was my childhood home.
Mm.
And everyone thinks that that's the best. And sometimes it is. Aging in place often is, a wonderful solution.
Or temporary when it works for a while.
Right.
It works till it doesn't.
It works till it doesn't. And it works wonderfully when there's not a diagnosis of a dementia.
Right.
Right. So that's the route that we took. And not knowing any better, because I was not in this industry, obviously. I had a 5-year-old, I had a 4-year-old, and had just found out I was pregnant with my third. Boy,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
That is a lot. And found out quickly, not the best solution. And so navigated that until we couldn't. Quickly finding out it was not the best solution. And I won't go into the trials because that's a different walk for everyone. And I certainly don't want to scare anyone who might be listening to this because it is a very different walk for everyone. But it led us to having to make a lot of difficult decisions. And I certainly had to walk a walk that I never thought that I would have to. But got to a point where after the decisions were made and after things were in place, I laid down in my bed one night and said, if I'm ever put in the position where I can help anyone with everything that I've learned and everything that I've gone through, God, I need to do that. Because that's always been the person that I've been, is if anything that I've learned, if I can use that. Always be careful when you do that, especially if you're a person of faith.
Ask what you put out there into the universe.
Because God has a way of cataloging those things. What do they say now? He clocks it. And boy, he sure did. So fast forward, I had 2 boys in high school and one getting ready to go in. And I decided I was bored at home. And so I was going to start looking for a little part-time job, just something to occupy some of my time. And I put out on Facebook, right? Me. At almost 50 years old at the time, I decided to use social media. It's not just for recipes.
That's right.
And I put out on Facebook that I was looking for a little part-time job, maybe 4 hours a day, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And a friend of mine reached out and said, hey, I have this young attorney that started in our building. He rents one room in my lawyer's building. And he's young and he's just starting out. And I think that you'd be a good fit with him. He's looking for somebody to answer his phones a couple of days a week. She goes, but it's kind of far. It's like an hour from where you live. And I said, well, what does he do? What kind of law does he do? He does elder law. Okay. So I said, well, I'll talk to him. But, had a conversation with Carl, the most awkward phone conversation that I've ever had.
But it'd have been awkward to try and come back, too, after being home for so long.
Right.
Yes, but I'm a pretty outgoing person.
No, really?
You know that.
I don't know. I don't know if we'd say that.
So after pulling a conversation out of Carl, because I don't know if you've ever spoken to Carl or not, but
Sometimes you got to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say this, when you get at that time, get Carl speaking about elder law, get him speaking about the aging population and how to help. Boy, that is his center. And
You can tell it's his passion.
it's his
Absolutely.
It is his center. It is his platform. And that conversation turned into a meeting. And that meeting turned into where we are.
And how many years later now?
It's going on 12.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah, he was on his own for about 6 months before we met. And when I met him, he literally had one office that he went into, fairly regularly. He didn't have a regular schedule. The joke is he had a couple of clients that he had brought with him from his previous law firm. He had really kind of, I don't want to say no plan. That's doing him a disservice, but not really.
Like you're figuring
He
out
was
as you go
starting
kind
it
of thing.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. And he brought me on board and I said, okay, listen, pretty much, I'm decidedly much older than him. And I said, if I'm going to do this and if I'm going to leave my kids, then I need to know what your plan is. I need to know where you want to see this in 5 years. And he said, well, in 5 years, I'd like to have maybe another part-time office somewhere in Bucks County and maybe another part-time person. And we often joke, he had said, so my job was to come on board with him, work maybe 2 or 3 days a week, maybe 4 hours a day. That was a good 2 weeks, because that's about how long that lasted. And now, 5 years into it, we had, I think, 14 employees and 3 offices. He still never lets me forget. None of them are in Bucks County. So I have failed the city. Here we are 12 years later, and I think we're doing pretty well.
And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but could you, in your own words, tell us what your role with the firm is?
I don't know. We are still, Carl and I often say we need to do a job description. So Carl will tell you that, and I am so grateful when he says this, we are business partners. He allows me to pretty much run and co-develop. We have co-developed this law firm to where it sits. And we have made this very unique. We are not your typical elder law firm. We are very family-oriented. So my role is I manage the staff, with the exception of the lawyers, because I am not an attorney. And so I can't really manage attorneys because I'm not an attorney. Although the attorneys come to me, the attorneys, for the HR side of it come to me. But I help hire. I hire pretty much all of the support staff. Carl and I partner in absolutely everything. He has become part of my family, and I his.
I think that's what makes the firm unique and gives it that family feel, because you can tell the mutual respect the two of you have.
Absolutely.
And that translates down to us as the staff. We feel that.
Oh, thank you. I don't know how to describe my role. I honestly don't, because with the exception of the law aspect of it, it's very hard to tell where Carl and I stop and start, because I think that people are just as comfortable going to him as me. He does not really handle staff issues, because his job is to be the lawyer.
Yeah.
Sure.
I handle the business aspect of it. I handle, the monetary aspect of it. The Medicaid aspect of it is all mine, because that's my passion.
Right.
That all falls on me. Yeah, I direct the Medicaid department. I deal with the county. I deal with the state when it comes to Medicaid issues. It's only if I can't solve a problem, that's when it pops back to the attorney, which is very seldom the case. The attorneys will a lot of times say, Lisa probably knows more about Medicaid than we do, with the exception of Carl. He's the brilliant mind behind that. But that is my passion because that is where I live.
So let's kind of stay right there where we are. Since we're on the topic of you running the Medicaid department, how did you get to that point? And like you just said, how did that become your passion within the firm?
So my mom had to go on Medicaid. And it was the whole spending down and what does that mean and what does that look like? Now, I will tell you, when I didn't sit on this side of the desk, as a daughter, I went through the whole, what do you mean we have to sell my childhood home? What do you mean that we have to liquidate everything? Now, my mom was one of the ones, she didn't have much. We didn't have much. That's the life that I came from. But we did have her home. And what do you mean we have to get rid of that? That's all she has. And, I was tasked with my stepdad still lived there. So I literally had to find some place for my stepfather to go. But sitting on the other side of the desk, that infuriated me. And so I got very much involved in that aspect of it. So that was definitely something for me that I was very motivated about. So now sit on this side of the desk, right? And one of my very first days with Carl had put together a Medicaid application. This is very funny, and I never let him forget this. It was one of the times that I despised him in my very early days, but one of the best things he ever did for me that he didn't realize he did for me. I think I was maybe with him for 3 days. And he comes in, he plops a Medicaid application on my desk. And this is back in the day when you had to go in person to submit a Medicaid application, which they do not do anymore. And I had to go to Middlesex County Board of Social Services. So first he tells me, go take this to Middlesex County Board of Social Services in Piscataway. It's not in Piscataway. It's in New Brunswick. Don't tell Carl he's wrong. Don't do that. On day 3. Do you know me? I told Carl he was wrong. That was the beginning of our beautiful relationship. So I told him he was wrong, and I went to New Brunswick and submitted the application. He says, all you have to do is take it in, wait for them to call your name, drop it off, and then you can leave. 3 hours later, because no, that's not what you do with a Medicaid application. They call you in, you sit down, and page by page, they go through the application and they ask you questions.
Wow.
So now they're asking me, yes, they're asking me questions on this Medicaid application that I didn't do, didn't even know the client. And OPS, Carl actually hadn't hired me yet. Why hadn't he hired me yet? Because we didn't have a payroll company. This was a trial thing that we were doing. So they're asking me these things. And then, oh, by the way, they're also asking me to sign things, initial things. I'm initialing this legal thing that I didn't even work for the company yet. I'm calling him. He's not answering the phone. This is how the love-hate relationship between Lisa and Carl started. So here's the part where he did me the biggest favor, though. When I'm sitting in front of this person who's going through this Medicaid application, she was a supervisor. She was training a Medicaid intake person. I got to sit there for 3 hours and listen to a supervisor tell a person she was training exactly what the Board of Social Services on the county level looks for when they're going through a Medicaid application. That was the best education that I ever got. Because here's something about me, I'm like an elephant. I don't forget anything that someone shows me and teaches me. It's one of the reasons why, and I don't say this with cockiness, I say this with pride about myself. It's one of the reasons why I'm good at what I do. When somebody teaches me something, I don't unlearn it. So I got to learn from a supervisor at the Board of Social Services how to do a Medicaid application properly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's the biggest gift he never knew he gave me. among all the other things that he's ever given me that were gifts. The gift of teaching, because Carl is an amazing teacher. That was the best gift he ever gave me.
And I'm sure that you now pass along that same knowledge to our own team of Medicaid specialists that we have with the firm, because we do, for our listeners out there, have a team of Medicaid specialists that are designated to work with our families to help them navigate the application process, the approval process, the whole 9 yards. So I'm sure you pass on that same knowledge to our own staff as like you learned when you were first getting into it.
I am the only person in this firm that trains our Medicaid application specialists. And we do all of our Medicaid applications in-house.
Right.
Not everyone can say that, but we do all of our Medicaid applications in-house. And our clients have direct access to all of our Medicaid specialists.
So there's always an open line of communication.
That is correct. And our clients always have direct access to me. I'm not a wizard behind a curtain. They can always reach out to me if there's ever an issue. They don't have to go through anybody else. They always, when they come in and meet our specialists, they always know who I am as well.
What do you think is one mistake that you see families make when they're trying to do it themselves, or they think they can do it themselves, apply for Medicaid for their loved one? Or a myth that you've heard from families about Medicaid?
So, it used to be, and I say this to families all the time, there was a time when Medicaid wanted to say yes to everybody. They wanted to approve everyone. Now they're looking for reasons not to, because the Medicaid system is taxed. I mean, they're just at their limit. And the Medicaid system has been abused. And so now they're really looking for people that are trying to abuse the system. And unfortunately, those people have ruined it for the people that really need it.
Right.
Right.
So one of the things that I hear a lot from people that have tried to do this on their own, that have failed, I didn't realize that they meant they needed that. So I always say to people, no, they meant they needed that. And,
Right.
Medicaid is now looking for the minutia. They're looking for those little things. I mean, when they say they want copies of every single check, nope, they're talking about every single check. That $5 check you wrote. And people don't take it seriously. They don't think that those little things matter. Nope, those little things are going to get you a denial. Or they think that if a deadline is X, they can go X plus 2 days. Or if the Medicaid limit is X, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm X plus $1 over. Oh, yes, it does.
Right.
They just think that there's leadway, and there's not. They think that the county is going to listen to their story. And they're not. And people don't realize it's not just a state thing. It's a state and federal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that they're not nice, but they're not nice.
Meaning the state.
Meaning the Medicaid program, meaning the Medicaid.
So have you seen it become increasingly, I don't know if the word is difficult, or are they throwing more trials and tribulations our way to get our clients and seniors in general approved for Medicaid?
Oh, it's become so much more difficult. Oh, I can't even tell you.
Let's take a step back and talk about the process from start to finish. Someone comes into the firm and says, hi, Lisa, I need to start the process for my mother or father of their Medicaid application. What does that look like?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is speak with an attorney. Because here's what I can tell you. When they sit down with one of our attorneys, if our attorney looks at that case on an individual basis and knows right off the bat that that client is not going to be able to get Medicaid, we are not going to take their money and then tell them they're not going to be able to get Medicaid. We are not going to set a family up for failure. We are going to say, okay, listen, looking at your case, Medicaid is not going to be something you're going to be able to get for X, Y, or Z. Let's see if we can come up with a plan B.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not going to charge them a fee just to get a failure because we've then represented them and not been able to provide that service, but yet we've made money on them. That's something we would never be able to lay our head on our pillow at night.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
I can't even imagine doing that. But we are going to still try to help them because obviously they came to us because they need help, right? Okay, so they sit in front of one of our attorneys. Our attorney goes over all of the facts and says, okay, we can help you with this. And so then they come and they go to one of our specialists, who they come and they speak with me. That's where we start the process and we lay out everything that they're going to need to get for us in order for us to put together this Medicaid application. Now, the reason I say get for us, because we don't have the power to get the financial documents that they need.
Right.
Right. Who has the power to do that? I know that Carl spoke about all of this stuff last week, the power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. There are some people that will put together a Medicaid application that will say, oh, we'll get all the documents that, we'll get everything for you. In order to do that, you have to relinquish some kind of power of attorney to someone.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In the world of things you don't want to do, I can't imagine a scenario in which you'd want to give somebody, a stranger, your power of attorney.
Yeah.
But who am I?
Right.
I'm
Right.
just saying. But we work with them. And if they run into problems, if they run into a situation where they're not being given the information, we'll get on the phone with that financial institution, with them on the other, with the power of attorney on the other line or sitting on the conference call. And we'll talk it through and we'll say, okay, so talk to me about why you're not able to give them that information. Explain to me as the attorney's office, break that down for me, why you're not honoring this power of attorney. Usually when they hear that we're on the other end of the fight, all of a sudden they can open up.
Right.
That's it. There's no more roadblocks.
Yeah. I think that's happened to both Mary and I in our roles also when we have to come in and sort of pound our feet. People think we're suddenly attorneys and then suddenly things start getting done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even that you're representing yourself as the attorney, but as soon as they know that
a part of the firm.
Right.
Because I will always get on that phone and say, before we even start this conversation, I am not
Correct.
an attorney.
Correct.
However, I have quite a few of them sitting right outside my door that would be more than happy to speak with you if I'm not enough. That usually raises some eyebrows. And so we actually hold that client's hand and walk with them through the entire application. Now, once we have all of the information we need, that's when they get to step back and we take over. So our Medicaid specialists go through everything, collate everything, put everything together. There's an entire application. If I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me, it's 18 pages long. Everything has to be filled out and filled in that application. Very tricky questions, the way that they word them. We can do them with our eyes closed. We fill that application out with all of the supporting documentation. That then comes to my desk. Now, those applications can be as large as the copier paper boxes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We filled 5 of them.
So that's what I
One
tell folks too, that they'll know what a Medicaid app looks like. I said, when I walk into your office sometimes,
Yes.
there's boxes,
A stack.
stacks of boxes, and it's one application and one person.
Yes.
Yes. Seldom. I think that maybe in my 12 years of doing this, I've had an application that can fit in a manila envelope, those flat envelopes.
I think that's also, families don't realize how much of the paperwork, the 5 years of what they have to go back and pull together.
Yeah, it's 60 months of statements. And it is not common for someone to have only had one bank
Right.
in their lifetime.
Right.
And we're talking, investments, 401ks.
Right.
Nobody has Christmas clubs anymore, which is sad. I mean, I think that I think that probably like 3 years ago was my last client who ever had a Christmas club. But
What's a Christmas club?
Oh, see,
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
Wow.
We'll talk about that later.
So, these applications are huge and everybody says, oh, you can do them online now. You still have to supply the supporting documents. So, we put all of that together. It comes onto my desk. I go through that application again just to make sure that we have everything that we need. Now, once we submit that application, it is Medicaid's job to go through and find things that we've missed. Sometimes I think that they make things up, but it's their job because they have to prove to their supervisor that they've gone through the application. But from that point on, we become the point of contact between whether the county or the state, the county or the federal, whatever level decides to come back and forth with us. We become the people that speak with them. They no longer go to the client. So that's kind of what we do. We also become the mouthpiece for the facility. So when they come around looking for payment during the pending period, our client doesn't have to deal with that. They can just go visit their loved one. And as a matter of fact, when the facility starts getting on the client, we go to the facility and say, hey, back off. Let our client visit their loved one. Let us worry about the monetary aspect of it. You have a question, you call us, and we'll talk to you about that. We'll be transparent with you.
And our specialists are very proactive with that.
Yes.
Reaching out to facilities, communities, keeping them updated.
We have that respect. And Carl and I
don't think everybody does.
Nope.
That.
Carl and I had to talk about that in the very beginning when we started this thing and decided who we wanted to be as a law firm and establish ourselves. And a lot of what we do has to do with the fact that my mom was in a facility. And I said to Carl, I really want to the best of our ability, and making sure that our client still remains our first priority, but I want to establish communication with a facility and have that respect with them because they deserve to get paid for the service that they're providing. And we both agreed on that. And that's one of the things that I have to give such credit to Carl for is the communication that he and I have back and forth and the respect that he maintains with these facilities and the fairness that he maintains. Again, always making sure our client comes first, but we try never to be adversarial with them, ever. Now, put Carl in the right scenario, and he can become adversarial, but that's never the choice that we make first.
No, that's being put in that situation.
Right.
Correct.
I just want to kind of paint the picture for kind of bring it all together here and just highlight the fact that everything at the firm kind of goes hand in hand with each other. So Mary and I in our role also work very closely with our Medicaid team to help our clients place in transition to make sure that they're in a place that they can go on Medicaid. So it's, the attorneys working with the Medicaid team, working with us. The families get us as an entire complete team and as one total package. So it's not just the attorney that they have, it's myself or Mary, it's our Medicaid team, and then it's Carl and Lisa also on top of that. So there's multiple different layers of support that our firm offers. And I think it's great how you and Carl have tailored our firm in such a way to make sure that our families have just added level of support throughout the entire journey.
So I always tell the clients, especially when they're sitting across from my desk, which again, clients know that they have access to me all the time. Even clients that don't hire us for Medicaid always have access to me. Docs, because I also speak to clients anytime a client has an issue with the firm, whether they're unhappy with the, time it takes for someone to reach back out to them. Those all come through me anytime that there's an issue, because my job, I am the fixer, right? When we were coming up with my title, janitor was one of them because I solved the problems. I fixed the problems, right? Give me a plunger. Because if there's a problem, I can fix it. That's what I do. I'm a solver. I want our clients, I want to be a generational law firm. I want people to feel comfortable with their kids coming to us. That's, I have Southern roots, right? That's my mom and dad were from the South. And back then, kids came to the same doctors and used the same lawyers. And I said to Carl early on, why can't we have that? Why can't we be that? He was young enough that he can be that. right? Me, I'm not, but he can. And I said I loved that culture when I would go and visit my mama. And I loved that culture down in the South. And so I want to create that kind of feeling for our clients where they're comfortable saying to their grown kids, hey, use the guy that Dad and I used, because they were really family oriented. So in order to do that, they have to know that if there's an issue, I want to fix it. I want to solve it, right? Because it's so much easier solving a small issue before it gets to be a big issue.
Right.
So when we have any kind of an issue in the firm, it doesn't have to be Medicaid. So when I have someone sit in front of me, one of the first things that I say to them, you did not just hire Carl Archer or Eric Wallstrom. You hired this entire firm. So if you sat in front of Carl and he was the attorney that you spoke with, and you have a problem and Carl is on vacation, that's okay. Because Eric knows your case. Because we all talk. We all talk about the cases. And so if Carl's not here and you have an emergency, Eric's going to know your case. I can guarantee Eric's going to know your case. So don't worry about it. If Carl's not here, Eric's going to be able to help you if it's an emergency. And if Mary's not here and you have an issue, Shannon's going to be able to jump right into Mary's shoes. So don't worry about that.
Right.
We've got you covered. Make a call to me. How many times have I called on a weekend and, Mary's not available, but that's all right. I got Shannon. Because here's one thing I can guarantee. Carl or Lisa makes a phone call, somebody's going to pick that phone up.
Definitely.
And Mary and I definitely are always in constant contact about our clients, what's going on, who's there, who's ready.
Right.
Just in the event that either of us never had to step in, we already kind of released somewhat aware of what's going on.
And the collaboration.
Yeah.
That's part of it too, to brainstorm, collaborate, and figure what's the best route for what our clients need.
Right. Especially, since we're on the topic of Medicaid, everybody knows what the word Medicaid, everyone has heard the word before, but there's so many things that actually go into Medicaid, what it's needed, what it's used for. If you could put into a definition or describe to us Medicaid all the benefits that it has, just touch on Medicaid lightly and what you think it could be used for.
Okay. So let me first tell you the big difference between Medicaid and Medicare, because I think that
that's true. I get clients who confuse that a lot.
Right. So when I go out and I talk to people about Medicaid, easiest way to describe it, Medicare is for people that have money, right? You get it when you're 65. It's something that comes along with Social Security. You go on Medicare. It's a benefit that covers some of your medical, some of your pharmaceuticals, covers hospitalization. Part of the Social Security Act, 1965.
Part A, Part B, Part C.
Right.
Part
D.
Right.
Part A covers hospitalization, and that's something that everybody gets because you have the right to be hospitalized. You can't be turned away. That's private hospital, which really don't exist anymore. Medicaid is what you get when you don't have any money. Biggest difference. Medicaid is one of the very few, maybe I would say one of the only, except long-term care, blah, 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 that covers long-term care facilities. Medicare does not cover any long-term care facilities.
Right.
Nursing homes, assisted livings. Now we're only talking New Jersey.
People are always so shocked and surprised to find that out because they're going to be able to use that benefit kind of whenever they need it for any of their healthcare needs.
Right. Now, Medicaid covers all of the other things. It covers your medicals. It covers pharmaceuticals. It covers podiatry, dentist. It covers everything. Why? Because it is for people who no longer have the funds. There are different, Carl likes to say, Medicaid is like Baskin Robbins. lots of different flavors. So there's a lot of children that are on Medicaid. There are a lot of people under the age of 65 that have Medicaid. For the most part, as an elder law firm, we handle Medicaid that's called ABD, aged, blind, and disabled. Most of our clients are over the age of 65, and they have found themselves in a position where they need long-term care in a facility. And so they need that housing aspect, which is not covered by Medicare.
Right.
So that's when they come to us and we help them establish themselves on the Medicaid program. We help them with the criteria.
And there's two different aspects, correct? There's financial criteria and medical. I
Correct.
think a lot of people don't realize that there's two criteria for Medicaid.
It's so complex. There's so many things that go into the benefit that I think people just don't even kind of even know where to start,
Right.
where to begin.
Right. We have people that come in and they, up to this point, they live in private housing or low-income housing, and they have no money left, and they want to go on Medicaid. They're driving themselves around, they're living their best life, they're still working. There is, for the Aged, Blind, and Disabled program, there is a medical specific section that needs to be met. They're called ADLs, and there's daily living assistance that's needed. And that's where you guys come in, because that's where you help people. Our attorneys actually ask those questions to make sure that both aspects are met. And that's where I say that they're the ones that help a client determine if this is something that will fit, because we're not going to just say, oh, yes, we can help get you, and then only to find out that a state nurse goes out and assesses them and finds out that they're never going to make it on Medicaid.
Right.
So, yeah, the activities of daily living are definitely something that people don't take into consideration, what you can and can't do, and if the state's going to deem you needy of this program.
What are some of the ADLs that the state wants to have in place in order for you to get the benefit?
Can you transition from bed to chair? Can you bathe yourself? Can you bathroom yourself? Can you feed yourself? Things like that.
Okay.
If you have one of the dementias that has hindered you, that's a pretty severe one, because from there you develop into the exit seeking, and those are just things that are safety. And so certainly if you have an actual diagnosis from a medical standpoint,
Right.
that's definitely something that you're pretty much going to be able to be deemed as needy. But, again, you're talking, a lot of people don't want to take that step because that's a realization that's very difficult for a loved one.
When is a good time for someone to come in and start the Medicaid application process?
Wow, that's a
Loaded
loaded question.
Because I personally feel like working in different roles in the industry, a lot of people try and do it when it's, I want to say, almost a little bit too late, or not too late, but it's a much more complicated process now than it would have been if you'd done it, let's say, 6 months ago.
So ask me when the good time is to come and speak with the attorney. Okay, that's probably the better question. So the good time to come speak with an attorney is when you have a diagnosis, absolutely. When you see a change in your loved one's behaviors, or when you think that something needs to happen, right? Because here's what I'm going to tell you. If your loved one is in a facility and you have funds and you're a spouse, there's time to have a conversation there, right? Because everyone thinks, here's a fallacy about Medicaid. Every spouse says, I'm going to lose everything. I can't have any money. Medicaid's going to take everything. I can't have any money. False. I need a buzzer to hit for the false. I need a false button. You need to have a conversation with someone who knows what they're doing and talk about that. Because if you're a spouse and you have assets, I don't want to give legal advice. You may want to, at some point, have a conversation with someone to talk about that. And you don't want to get stuck in a situation where you have spent everything and then don't have the funds to speak with an attorney, don't have the funds to have someone help you with that Medicaid application, and have spent unnecessarily and have nothing left to support yourself in your lifestyle.
I think that's where lack of education hurts families.
Correct.
If they don't go and talk to somebody just to get information and educate themselves about this process.
Absolutely.
They could be stuck in that where they didn't realize, spent more than they needed to, or felt threatened because of lack of education.
Correct. And I will tell you this, if you speak with an attorney who is, going to use an old term here, worth their salt, they will say to you, and I can tell you that I have heard Carl say this more times in 12 years than I can count, come back and speak to me in a year. Come back and talk to me in a year and a half. Come back and talk to me in 2 years. And that is what you want an attorney to say. You're speaking to me a little bit too early right now, but come back and have this conversation with me in 2 years.
I've also heard him say that to clients before too.
Me
Right.
too.
Yeah.
And that's going to be without them taking one dime from you.
Right.
Because they're saying, I've looked at what you have, I've looked at where you are, I've looked at what you're spending. You're okay for right now, but 2 years from now, we need to have this conversation again. Because you don't want to do anything too early, but you don't want to do anything too late, but you need to speak with someone who's educated on what you're going through to tell you when that time is.
Right. I've also heard him say to call when there's a change in condition or
Correct.
if something changes in the situation.
Correct. And that is someone who cares about you and doesn't care about
Right.
the money.
Correct.
Lisa, what's one piece of advice you give someone who's become a new caregiver and may need to think about future care for their loved one? There's someone that's just thrust into the caregiver process. They're in full crisis mode. What would you suggest for that person?
Put your own oxygen mask on first.
I think that's
Take
so
a deep
hard,
breath.
too.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath, because I will tell you, and this is me being very real right now, becoming my mom's caregiver almost cost me my marriage, almost cost me my unborn child. And that is very real and very raw. It can be all of those things. Take a breath. Find your support. Cling to that first, because you can so quickly get lost. And just take a step back and try and make a plan. And if you don't know how to do that, my favorite Tony Robbins quote, I don't necessarily care for him. Sorry if he's listening. Fellow podcaster. Find someone, don't reinvent the wheel. Find someone who has done what you're trying to do and ask them how they did it.
It's so true.
You can find our phone number online, and if you ever call and say, hey, Lisa, how did you do it? I'll be more than happy to buy you a cup of coffee or have a phone conversation with you. Not as someone who works for Archer Law, but as Janice Alston's daughter.
Right.
So you have to try and formulate a plan, because it will eat you alive. And just surround yourself with people who are going to hold you up, and then take it one step at a time. Same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
One of the biggest things we've been hearing out in the community are with the new changes to Medicaid. How have you seen that affect? Or is it affecting the Medicaid that we do for families with long-term care yet?
It has not affected anything that we're doing yet, and I am going to shrug my shoulders just like everyone else.
That's okay, because right now that's the question we're being asked.
Right.
Is it affecting the Medicaid process, the application process for the long-term care?
No, it's affecting programs mostly for other types of Medicaid, and it's just affecting the programs. I have not seen or heard anything yet that it's affecting in our type of Medicaid.
And not that we're delving politically, but with the current government shutdown, if we're still shut down when this airs, does a government shutdown have anything to do? Does it delay the process?
I can't imagine it delaying it any more than it delayed the last.
Great answer, Lisa.
That's a good answer. Just to clarify that for some of the listeners, because it's questions Shannon and I get, and it's also very relevant right now.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the show today with all the knowledge that you have. We're definitely going to have you back on to really dive deep into more Medicaid issues. But I have to ask you before we go, do you have any stories that you could share about a time where you felt like what you did at the firm really, really helped the family out?
I do. And actually, after Carl shared his story the last time, he said that he was vacillating between one and this one. And he said he saved purposely this one for me. So many years ago, I know Carl spoke about Tom Callahan the last time when he was on. Tom Callahan, who is a beloved colleague that we had, who's no longer with us. We had a client who came in, and when Carl was speaking with her, she hired him to do Medicaid. Because of the information that she gave to him, it presented itself as a Medicaid case. And when she started giving me her documents and her bank statements and things, I was going through them, and I very quickly found out that she would never, ever be approved for Medicaid because the information she gave to Carl was actually not how it presented in the bank statements. And I think that a lot of times people aren't honest with themselves. And there was so much gifting that this woman and her husband had done, that there was no way that this Medicaid application was ever going to get approved, or the gifting would have just been so vast that it would have never worked. But I didn't want to present Carl with a problem without going to him with some kind of solution. So I called Tom from my office, who was the director of senior living resources. And I said, hey, I need you to come in and we need to figure this out before I go to Carl. So he came in at 4:30 in the evening with a bottle of wine, some cheese, some crackers. And we sat there until about 8 o'clock that night and went through everything. And I had a talk with him and we kind of just ping-ponged it back and forth. And after he went through almost the entire bottle of wine, because I was looking at numbers, the next morning I presented Carl with a possible solution. And Tom and I went to that woman's house the next day and we explained everything to her. And we could not get her on Medicaid. We explained that to her, but we came up with another solution after Carl approved what we had come up with. And no, we did not get her on Medicaid, but we came up with a plan and it worked beautifully. And that woman got into a different type of place with her husband. And she was so thankful to us because even though Medicaid was a fail, would have never, ever worked, we came up with a plan B. And she and her husband lived out their life exactly the way that they wanted to. And it came out even better because she was so much more happy than she would have been because she didn't have to leave his side. She got to be there with him until he took his last breath. And she actually found a life on her own. She joined a choir. She got to just develop a life for herself that she wouldn't have had. And that is what keeps us going to the next person. And so Carl and I said, okay, well, that taught us something. We always have to be able to be ready to have a plan B in case plan A doesn't work, because clients don't always know when they come in, or they fool themselves into thinking something is what it isn't.
Right.
Right.
So well said. And, Mary and I also just want to thank you for all that you do for our firm. Thank you again for coming on our show today. Again, this is part one. We'll definitely have you back on to dive
Yes, there's
more
a lot
into
more to
the
dive into.
the QITs and all the fun things
my God.
Medicaid. So,
Oh my God, so
as
much.
always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone that could benefit.
Just remember, you don't have to navigate aging or caregiving alone.
If today's conversation raised questions about elder law, long-term care, or planning ahead, visit jerseyelderlaw.com or call 609-842-9200 to find resources and support.
This is For Mature Audiences Only, presented by Archer Law Office. Until next time, keep pushing forward and keep the conversation going.